Well, actually, much of what I'm going to be teaching you is what I've learned over the last 30 years, because I want to dispel a lot of the misunderstandings. But first, I just want to say a few things before I get into the knowledge.
Okay.
Number one, Jyotish, astrology, prediction will never be perfect. It'll never be 100%. We will get great predictions, but it will never be perfect. Okay, so when you approach astrology, you must approach it with a very, very open mind.
Mm-hmm.
I approach astrology only by what works. I do not care what somebody says, what somebody teaches. So my practice, I've gotten much better as an astrologer over the 30 years because I don't care what the scripture says. I don't care even with what Padya says if it doesn't work for me. If it works, fine. He was great. I'm not saying he wasn't. But I'm saying that I only use what works. So in the next hour or however long I speak, I'm going to be telling you not theories, but what works. I cannot promise it will work for you, but it works for me. I can say 90% it should work for you too. But an astrologer should not use what someone teaches. They should use what works, okay? And I'll give you an example. I have one, if I do horoscopes for people that have a very bad ninth house, if their ninth house is very bad, it means they have trouble getting knowledge, higher knowledge. My experience is that I have trouble with their horoscope. I have difficulties getting a lot of information because their karma is not good. Secondly, they will insult me. They will put me on a speakerphone. I was once teaching this in a big conference, and Robert Hand blurted out, Braha's Law. In other words, Braha's Law is if the client has a bad ninth house, the reading is difficult, etc. So that will probably work for most astrologers, but I can't promise. Secondly, when I say that you have to keep an open mind, the other thing is there's two qualities that you have to be a great astrologer. And the two qualities are diametrically opposed. One of them is that you have to have supreme confidence in yourself, in your abilities, in your talents, in your discipline. You have to have confidence that if you see something that you believe, that you say it and you stand behind it. But you also have to have complete humility that you could be wrong. Just because you're great, just because you studied, just because this prediction worked 10 other times, it could fail this time. So you have to have supreme confidence and supreme humility, and you have to have them both to be great. Secondly, you have to look everywhere. So, for example, when I was getting married in my second marriage, it was 1993. And I had been single for 12 years in between my first marriage and second marriage. And I got engaged around maybe the summer of 92 or the fall of 92. And I told people I'm engaged, I'm going to get married, and we're planning the marriage for early 1993. A friend of mine who's a very great astrologer, he's not alive anymore, he calls me up, he says, you're not getting married. So why not? He says, because there's nothing in the Western horoscope or the Hindu horoscope that indicates a marriage. And I said, you know, I know that. I have seen it. I know it, but I am getting married. Now, meanwhile, from the years 1983, from the time I was in India all the way to 1979, 80, 83, all the way to 1992, astrologers and psychics, oh, you're getting married next year. Oh, in 2 years. And it never happened. Now I'm getting married in 1993. It's nowhere to be found. So sure enough, I get married. And then 8 months later, I'm at the Vedic Astrology Conference, and K.N. Rao is teaching Jaimini, the Jaimini system or the Jaimini system, and he's using Charadashas. He's giving me a reading, and I say, I got married 8 months ago. does it show up? And he says, yes, it's right here. It's right here. And I think, oh, he's just saying that. But then I begin to learn Jaimini. About 7, 8 months before I got engaged, I entered in Jaimini a Libra dasha. Libra is relationships.
Yeah.
It's relationships. And Libra, in my chart, holds Mercury, which is in the lowest degree. It's the Dharaka, it's the Karaka of marriage. I hit that period, and within those 8 months, I started having serious relationships. So you have to look everywhere you can. The more you don't need, in my opinion, you don't need lots of extraneous detailed techniques to go far. You just need the basics of a lot of different systems that work well. Okay. So the other thing is, I'm going to be telling you the knowledge, different things to be aware of. But remember that different cultures get different results. When I go to Switzerland, all the charts look like the people are wealthy. When I go to Iceland, the 8th houses are very strong. Everybody lives to 95 and 100, and they love astrology because the 8th houses are strong. When I was doing charts for Indians, not so much now, but in the 90s, in the late 80s, in the 90s, if I did a chart for an Indian that was born in India, and the chart indicated the arts or writing or design, things that were more artistic but not money-making, the predictions would fail. I would say your dharma is to be an artist. Your dharma is to be a musician. And they would say, well, I'm an engineer. Well, I'm a lawyer. Well, I'm a doctor. This drove me nuts. By the early 2000s, I would do a reading for an Indian. I would say, your dharma is to be an artist, but I'm guessing that you are like an engineer or a lawyer or a computer. And their jaw would drop. They would say, that's true. And then they would say, but I'm not really happy. I would like to do the arts. But now that's changing. Also, Chakrapani, who is in America, had a big career here. He would tell astrologers who came from India, he says, you're not going to be able to predict for Americans because the cultures are different. Eventually, you figure out the cultures. Anyway, so I'm going to be telling you lots of different pieces of information. And then, for example, divorce. Very hard to predict divorce in other countries because they will stay together in a bad marriage. In America, you're in a bad marriage, over. It's different. Okay. So I'm going to talk about lots of different things, pieces of information that may be helpful.
So what's the first topic we're going to take?
First topic is how to see a person's spiritual path in the horoscope. And again, this is general information. It will work. It may not be 100% like everything else, but it will work. It will work. So there are 3 planets to look for. Saturn, Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva means meditation, austerity, fasting, avoidance of the senses. So if Saturn aspects the first house or the first house ruler, because that's you will have the Shivite tendency. If Saturn aspects the sun, which is the Atma, the soul, it's you, the sun is you. Saturn aspects the sun, there will be Shivite energy. If Saturn aspects the moon, which is the most important planet in the system, the person will have Shivite energy. Now you need to discriminate between how close it is. If Saturn is in the first house at 25 degrees, but the ascendant is 2 degrees, yes, there's some Shivite energy. But if it's close to the ascendant, it's much stronger.
Correct.
If Saturn's in the first house and it aspects the moon or the sun, it gets stronger still. Okay. Secondly, you have Jupiter, Lord Krishna, Lord Brahma. Krishna is devotion. So the people that are in the Hare Krishna movements, Jupiter will be in the first house. Jupiter will be with the sun. Jupiter will be with the moon. Or Jupiter will aspect the first house ruler. That's devotion and prayer. The faith in God. That will be their path. Mercury, Lord Vishnu, is evolution through the mind. The truth will set you free. That is what Advaita is about. Okay? Now, in many cases, because you're an astrologer, you're going to be seeing spiritual people. In many cases, they will have 2 or 3. Okay? Saturn, in my horoscope, aspects the sun. Okay? That's all it aspects. It doesn't aspect the first house or the first house ruler or the moon, but it's 15 degrees from the sun, so there is Shivite energy. Jupiter aspects the sun as well, so there's some devotional energy. It doesn't aspect the ascendant ruler or the ascendant or the moon. Mercury, however, is very strong. It aspects the moon. Mercury and moon are aspecting each other, and Mercury is 3 degrees away from the sun. So Mercury is the strongest. Now, what I was attracted to mostly was transcendental meditation. I taught transcendental meditation for 7 years, and I've practiced transcendental meditation all my life. So there's a big Shivite nature. But my biggest final push was with Advaita. And I wrote a book, The Living Reality. I studied with Sailor Bob Adamson, who was a student of Nisargadatta. After that, I was done. I got what I wanted. Now, funny story. When I was single for 12 years, I was very, very lonely. I had different relationships. They never worked. And I thought, maybe I have to find someone who's not, I was always with spiritual women, but someone who practices my kind of meditation. So I went to Fairfield, Iowa, where all the transcendental meditation people are. I within a couple of months, found the woman that became my wife. After we were married, very quickly, she stopped meditating. She was not, I said, what is this? I went there to find someone meditating, and she stops. She's like, oh, I don't care so much about that. In her horoscope, Saturn aspects nothing. It aspects not the sun, not the moon, not the ascendant, okay? Jupiter aspects the moon. Jupiter aspects the ascendant. So she was more devotional. So that's the spiritual path. So that's what you have to look at, okay? Now I'm going to speak a little bit about the power of stationary planets.
Oh, that's a very important.
Very important point. This is something where when I say a stationary planet, you're going to have to look in your computer to see, or the ephemeris, to find when it's stationary. Now, when I say stationary, it can really be a day before stationary, a day after stationary. It could be stationary direct or stationary retrograde. Doesn't matter. The planet slows down, stops. That's stationary. When it's, let's see, it's planets going forward. Sorry, planets going forward, slows down, stops. That's called stationary retrograde. A day on either side of that, the planet's going to be super strong. Then it slowly backs up for a month or 2 or 3 or 5, stops. That's the stationary direct. A day before that or after that makes a planet super strong. Now, I can tell you, and if you read my books, you'll see examples. Donald Trump has Jupiter in the 2nd house stationary, within a day of stationary, in the 2nd house, the house of money. It's even in a bad sign. It's in Virgo, not a good sign for Jupiter, but it's stationary, super powerful. John F. Kennedy had stationary Mars and stationary Uranus. 2 planets. Yeah, 2 planets. Marlon Brando had Jupiter in the 1st house a day or 2 from stationary. Made him very heavy and famous. I can give you those, but I want to talk about the clients that you do, the people that you do, okay? If a person has a stationary planet, that planet will be super strong, but you won't always be able to find out what it is because of what the person is saying. So, but if you see it, you know it's strong. This never fails. If it's Venus, it's the arts or love. If it's Mercury, it's the intellect and communications. But it's also the house it's in and the houses that it rules. But here's the thing. You could have a client who has Saturn in the 1st house, or Saturn with the sun or moon. They have no confidence. you start to say, wow, you've got a brilliant intellect. There's so much, you could have really great abilities here. And they say, no, I don't really have that. No, I don't really have it. So you have to push. And then the person will say, well, okay, I did have a teacher who said I was the smartest person they'd ever seen in 30 years. So, but you have to have, that's the confidence that you have to have as an astrologer, because if you see the stationary planet, it is strong. Whether or not they have used it so much, that you're going to have to find out, but it is strong. So
Can I ask you a question?
So Donald Trump, within a week of the election, November 16th, goes into a Jupiter dasha, and Jupiter is stationary. I am not predicting that he will be president. I don't know that he'll even get to the Republicans are likely to dump this guy because he's so crazy. But in any case, when that Jupiter dasha kicks in, I do expect him to make a lot more money than ever, because Jupiter is stationary and he goes into that dasha. He's already made the money, but
how do we find out? My question to you is,
well,
how do you find out whether that stationary planet is powerful? You said it's powerful.
It is powerful. It's just a question of whether, when you say to the person, wow, you have a stationary Venus, you must have tremendous artistic skills. If they say no, the problem is not the planet. The problem is the client. You need to find out how it's working, because trust me, it's working. The ability is there. And it might be the house that Venus is in is strong. It could be the houses that Venus rules is strong. It could be that Venus is strong. The person's not an artist, but they have a love partner that is famous. If you look, you will find it.
Okay. I would like to go controversial here. Let's go to Donald Trump. I don't remember his horoscope. Mars on the Lagna or second house. Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Probably he's got I do not remember his horoscope. Probably he's got Mars in the Lagna or the second house. I can be wrong. You mentioned about Jupiter being stationary. When you say stationary, Jupiter is powerful. Now, isn't Jupiter supposed to be just and religion, etc., everything just, the guru? But we have few diverse views of Mr. Trump having very extreme views.
I am not saying that this is a religious man, a spiritual man, a man with good judgment. I didn't say that.
Okay.
You have to find where it's functioning.
Oh.
But it is, I can tell you this, it is in the house of money.
Oh.
And you have to find it. You have to find where it is. Hank Aaron has a stationary Jupiter, the baseball player who hit the most home runs in history until steroids came along, has a stationary Jupiter in the 5th house. So you could say, oh, he might be in politics. Oh, he might be a genius. Oh, he might be in sports. It turns out it's in sports. You have to find out where the genius is, but trust me, it will be there somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
So that's your point on stationary.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I want to talk about...
James, sorry, just one question about that. Different planets have a different quality or lengths, let's say, for which they are stationary. Like Jupiter or Saturn will be longer time stationary than fast-running planets?
Just go one day on either side.
For all of them?
That's what I do. You could experiment. I just use one day because the planet is moving. It is begun to move, and it's moving, and it's moving. I just use one day. I mean, so I will say this. If the planet is slower rather than stronger, it will have a certain strength. They say that in the scriptures, that it gets complicated, but
yes,
a slower planet can be powerful, but I need to talk about retrograde planets to explain that. I'll get to that.